love God always puts you in interesting places.
That's right.
This will be the quietest class I've ever had. And I'm so glad you're here. It just impresses me so much
Hang on a second. Make a light adjustment.
when you can be, it impresses me so much when you can be in a room with people, so many people that love the Lord. And that is so exciting to me. My name is Kila Watts, and the title of the class is How to Conquer Fear, and how that came up is Frances has seen me talking to people in a lot of different situations, and so she said, can you come and talk to the ladies about sharing the gospel with strangers? Because I'll go door to door, the rescue mission, it doesn't matter. I hand out flyers in neighborhoods, and I talk about Jesus with my neighbors. They probably stay inside sometimes to stay away from me. But I'm always talking about Jesus. Because he says, if you're ashamed of me, I'll be ashamed of you. And I am not ashamed of the gospel. So, to conquer fear, the fear that keeps us from sharing the gospel, I'm glad I have two classes to teach. Because the first class is not about how to speak to people. That will be the second class. The first class is actually going to cover two subjects. And two questions that I had to ask myself reading the scriptures was, I read Proverbs 1:7, which says, the first step to wisdom is the fear of God. And I had to ask myself, do I have the fear of God? And I had to say to myself, no, I don't. And then my next question is, how do I get it? Because that is the first step to wisdom. So if I don't take the first step, how can I take another step? So I started studying about what it meant to fear God. And that changed my life. Because until you do two things, you will never be comfortable sharing the gospel with people. The first thing is you must come into a healthy fear of God. And then you must love Christ. Christ tells us in John 14, he was talking to his disciples, and he said, you must love me and keep my commands. That's different than you must know me and keep my commands. Because we can know the Bible, but we have our fear inside of being rejected, of being abused and persecuted, of being hated, of the world not liking us. We have fears because we have insecurities. And Satan takes those weaknesses and he runs those tapes in our heads about how we're unworthy and how we don't know enough and we're not good enough. And we will be fools if we try to speak about things we don't know. And he tells us those things, so we hold back and we hide in a box and we isolate ourselves and we fill our lives with busy. But we don't spread the gospel and we don't tell people about Jesus because we have fear about ourselves. And God is calling us out. Paul wrote Timothy and said, God did not make us, shy and timid and afraid. There's no fear in God. He made us with boldness. And he made us not with timidity, but boldness. Go out and speak. They're going to hate you. They're going to persecute you. But you know what? I'll be with you to the end. And it doesn't matter if you have swords or guns or weapons. In one of the Psalms, it speaks about man thinking that if he had a horse where he had power or he could run away, he would have security and be protected. And God says, no, I'm your protection. Not a sword, not a gun, not a horse, not escape. You don't have to escape because it's Satan, and I've already won victory over Satan. So before I was able to share the gospel, I had to give myself to God. And I had to find out what that meant because I really wasn't being taught that. And that comes from the first thing is prayer. Pray on your knees as hard as you can for God to help you to understand his word, to give you wisdom give you boldness, to give you his power, not yours. It's not your power, it's God's power in you. And Jesus says that if you love me and keep my commands, he said, any man that does that in John 14, the Father and I will come and make a home in you. We'll manifest ourselves to you. We'll be with you. And all throughout the Bible, God is calling out saying, I made you. I created you. Do you think I want to see you fail? No. I know that you can be great, but only through me can you be great. Because if you're great through you, that's pride and arrogance. But if you're great through me, you can have unlimited power. And that is when you learn to fear the Lord. And so the next thing I had to learn in my life was how do I love Christ? Because when I read that, if you love me and keep my commands, I thought, I don't love Christ. I say I'm a Christian. I go to church 3 times a week. I read the Bible. I pray occasionally, not very well, and I'm not connected to God. And you know what? It took me back to 1 Corinthians. And in 1 Corinthians, that is the chapter of love. And I thought a lot about Jesus saying, you must love me. And I thought, okay, how do you love Christ? How do you love him? How do you come to him? And so I thought, go back in your life. Everyone has had, probably I would say everyone's had some kind of chemistry with the opposite sex, that they were in love. In their minds, you're in love. And you know what that feels and looks like? Can't wait to be with you. Can't wait to talk to you. Can't wait to share with you. Can't wait to give you gifts. Can't wait to do everything that pleases you. That's what God is calling us to be for him. That's what love is. When you surrender yourself to another person to please them, that's what God is calling us to do. So I thought, I have to get that for Christ. Because until I have that love for Christ, I will never be able to really share him because I'm too worried about me. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, Paul's writing to Timothy, and he said, the last days will be perilous times, and people will be lovers of self. Isn't that what we're seeing now in the world? Isn't that what we see in the church too? People they buy a stick to hold their phone out to take their own picture, a selfie. I mean, it's a crazy world where people are obsessed with themselves. They live on Facebook because they want everybody to know everything about their life. It's about them. And they don't realize how subtle Satan is. Satan is taking good people and they're allowing him to bring them into a world that is self-involved. All about self. All about me. Look at my life. Look what I've done. Look where I went on vacation. Look what I own. Look what I've got. Look at my house. Look at my car. Look at my clothes. Look at me. And that is exactly what Paul wrote to Timothy. They will be lovers of self. They will be boasting in themselves. We boast about our stuff. I mean, when I say that, I am not condemning anyone. I now do jail ministry with women because I used to be an alcoholic and a drug addict. And yes, wow is right. And
So you've had a lot of experiences.
Oh, unbelievable. I was the prodigal son. My parents.
Glad you're back.
Yes. And you know what? I am proof that Christ can make anyone like he did Paul. Did Paul spend his life and his ambition to hunt Christians down, torture and kill them and imprison them? Yes. And did God and Jesus Christ, his son, choose him to become his spokesman? Yes. He wrote 13 of the books in the New Testament. Paul wrote those. And he was the person that persecuted the Christians worse than anyone. He participated in the stoning of Stephen. So God, and when I started reading the Old Testament to come to know who God was, because God worked with man before Christ came in the New Testament and the covenant was changed. So you can go back to the New Testament and study who God was. He hasn't changed any. And so he takes the most unusual. He takes the most, I would say, he uses the people that are the most unlikely to be his spokesman. Those are the people he uses. You can look at Moses' life with the Pharaoh and the palace and the education and the money and all he had. And he was preparing him. And God prepares us through our lives to work for him. And some of us, like me, are hard-headed and self-willed, and it's harder for him to get through to us, so it takes longer. I always tell myself, well, he didn't start using Moses until Moses was 80, and I was a late bloomer too. so I know that he has a plan for everyone if they love him. And I'm an example of that. I went to church 3 times a week from birth until I was 18 years old, Church of Christ. My mother was there when the doors were open. She was a Sunday school teacher. She married my father, who was an alcoholic, and in 10 years she converted him. And that's where some of the alcoholism came from. I grew up watching that. You know, my daddy does it. I can do it too. And so I basically took everything I owned like the prodigal son and ran away from home at 18. And at 37, I lived all over the world. I lived in Europe. I lived Nashville, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Sausalito, Hawaii. Traveled all over with friends from San Francisco to Mexico City in Volkswagen vans, and did just crazy stuff just all over the world. And I was running away from myself because I have so much pain inside. And that is why I work with addicts, because addicts are not addicted like we think to drugs and alcohol. They are trying to run away from themselves. And they have so much pain inside that when you get high, you don't have to feel any pain. And I loved it because you don't have to feel pain. And my father was incredibly emotionally abusive, and I couldn't handle the pain. So I found I had relief when I was high, and I loved it. But what happens is it becomes an addiction. And if you never deal with the pain, which Satan came up with a great plan in the world by telling us about psychology, which is just another way to distract us from the Word of God, because God is the answer. Christ is the answer to everything. And Christ will take away your pain, and psychology will never take your pain away, no matter how much you know what's wrong with your life. Psychology can teach you everything. I studied it in college. I knew everything about it. I knew where it came from, what my dad did to me. I forgave him, and I knew where all that pain came from, but I could not release myself of that until at 45 years old, I really surrendered to God. And when I did that, I started praying for him to take the pain away, because he says, ask me. I mean, he loves us. And so I started asking for all sorts of things. And I realized when somebody tells me they're bipolar, I think, wow, they're so programmed for this culture that you cannot get through to them because they have an excuse to have their pain now. It's not their fault. But it's hard for them to believe that Christ can wipe your slate clean. He can take away your sin. He can take away your pain. He can mold you into what he calls the blameless, perfect person. And when I say that, I don't mean you're never going to sin. You are. But like the Bible says, there are some sin that do not create death. And we all fall prey to certain things, and we do things. But the point is to always go back for forgiveness. Our greatest example of that is King David. Nobody could sin more than that. To steal a man's wife, impregnate her, and then kill him off, you couldn't do much more than that. And when he came back to God, he did it in such reverence, and it was so much remorse, and he begged God. He was, he was willing to do anything to save his child's life. But there are consequences in our decisions. The thing that's the hardest to teach people is that Christ will take your pain away, because he is perfect love. there is perfection in the Lord, and it is an amazing journey that you can make in Him. But you have to get up every day. Luke 9:23. Get up every day and bear that cross for the Lord in self-denial. And what I found that really meant to me is that I had to remove myself from the world as much as I could because Satan is so strong. So I didn't text. I don't text. I'm not attached to my phone. That's another addiction I see that people have. I am not a Facebook person. I've never been on Facebook. I don't do cultural things. I spend my time studying the Bible, and I am not standing up here telling you I'm perfect. I'm on my knees every day because I see the wretched sinner. I do. And I want you to know you have to really work hard at learning to fear the Lord and loving Christ and loving Him so much that He will take power over your life. I mean, you have to see that I came from smoking, cursing, drugs, and alcohol. That's where I came from. And at 37, I woke up in Aspen, Colorado, and I worked in a 5-star hotel. And I was a functioning addict. I always worked. No one ever knew that I had a problem. But I realized, being around addicts, that I was going into the last stage of addiction where people start stealing and they start doing things that they can't really come back from because they burn all their bridges and they end up in prison and jail. And I know what that I've never been there. I've never been to jail, never been to prison. But I know I said to myself, I can't keep living like this. And it wasn't even God that brought me back. But I know in my heart, my mother, this is the key. This is the key for everybody in this room, for all Christians. My mother planted the seeds. And the seeds were always in me because she took me to church for 3 times a week till I was 18. The seeds of God were in me, and wherever I lived, I went seeking God. I went to a Catholic church. I did not know if I believed in the Church of Christ because I wanted to find out. The Bible says, question all authority. And I thought, I'm going to go and seek this out. Well, I can tell you, I walked in a Catholic church and I freaked out because the Bible says not to have graven images. That was the first thing I saw. I went, woo! I want out of here. And I went to the Episcopal church. I went to a Methodist church. I went to evangelist churches, evangelicals. I went to healing. I even went up on the stage when they were healing somebody because I thought, can people really heal? I mean, it looks so convincing. And you know what? God, when you know the Word of God, you will never be confused. And God says, I am love. I am perfect. And I am love. I am love. If anyone treats you out of love in a ministerial position, a church position, a minister, someone who claims to know God, if they treat you outside of love, they do not know God. So your answer is right there. And I walked up on the stage in Hawaii at a healing thinking, are these people really healing these people? And I wanted to know. Well, God gave me my answer. When I got on stage, the guy says, okay, lady, what's wrong with you? And I said, nothing. I just want to come up here and watch this. And woo, they were so offended. They wanted me out of there because I was not part of their program. And their program was a lie. And so what happened was they threw me off the stage. And I said, I just wanted to see you healing people and see what you're doing. And I wasn't obnoxious and I didn't say anything negative to them. I just said I needed to know the truth. They wanted me out of there. And that preacher told his helper, get her off the stage. And at that moment, I had my answer. They are not of God. There is no such thing. Now, you can pray for people, and intercession prayer is a wonderful thing, and we do it all the time, but God heals. Man does not heal. God heals. And so I went to all these places looking for God because my mother planted the seeds. And the thing that was so beautiful about that is I learned an incredible lesson from that because I found working with people, if you work as doing a job, you will be burned out. You'll burn out, you'll get tired, people will wear you out, you will be so frustrated with people that, they will smile to your face and tell you what you want to hear, and they will steal everything they can from you. If you work for the people I work with, but I want you to know it is not my job to worry about if they steal my stuff. Take it. It's not my job. My job is to come and show Jesus Christ. And my job is to plant seeds. And my job is not to worry about results. Because when we worry about results in Christ, then we have become arrogant and judgmental. And nobody will come to Christ if you judge them. So when I teach, I always use my life as the example of how we are wretched sinners. I do not get up here and teach people as if I am trying to shove a Bible down their throat and tell them all that I know, because I'm just a normal person like you and everyone in this room that's trying to do their best and live in this life to make it to heaven. And to spend, the thought of being somewhere with no pain, no tears, and worshiping the Lord day and, well, there's no night, just worshiping the Lord. That's an incredible thought. What a beautiful place to live. And I came to understand the Bible better because I get this question all the time. These people live literally in hell on this earth, in jail. They live in hell. They don't have people that love them. Nobody ever taught them anything. That's where compassion comes from, the fruit of the Spirit. Galatians 5:19 and 20. You should have compassion for all people because these people may appear to be abrasive, aggressive, but you know what? They're just like me. They're a little girl that wants somebody to love them. And that's what we all are. And so when I see them, I talk to them about these things, and I have compassion for them because I know because of my own experiences, like Paul, that I went through all of that for a reason. And now when I'm with people that suffer, I don't care if they abuse me because it's not abuse to me. I love God and God is with me. It's not important what they think of me. But what I can give them is hope in Jesus Christ. And that's how we minister to people, is we have to find our own story. And your story, I remember working in a program one time, and it was called Jobs for Life, and I brought 3 women into this program, and they trained them how to do interviews and talk to bosses, and these are generally people that have a very hard time getting jobs in life. And when they leave, they know how to interview, they've got their story together, how to sell themselves and show their assets. They have a great resume, and it's all done out of the Bible. It is an incredible program. And so these women that came to it, when they went to graduation and got their awards, it's 16 classes, said, I almost didn't come to this. People say this all the time. But what happened to me in that class was not about resumes. I saw the love of Christians. I saw people come and spend time with me, and we always had a meal before every class, and bring me food and serve me. And one lady went through a program and got her a car. And there's just so much that happens that the Lord brings to the table when we seek Him out for these people. And so what they want is they don't want to hear about Christ, they want to see Christ. They want to see it, and I call it doing Christ. And I have Bible classes, and I take these ladies, and I say, let's not study the Bible anymore. We'll do that once a week. Let's go do it. Let's go do Christ. Let's go door to door. Let's go talk to people about Jesus. Let's invite people to church. Let's pass out flyers to kids, in a town somewhere for vacation Bible school. Let's go do Christ. And they always tell me how much that means to them, because there's no way that you can go and work for Christ and not be touched in your heart. Christ will touch your heart. It's not about me, and it's not about you. And you have to let go of all the results and know that God is in control. And when you do that, magical things happen because God is in control. And, truthfully, you can teach people all you want, but it might not take effect, like me for 20 years. They might not have any effect of those seeds for 20 years. But at 37, I woke up and said, I can't live like this anymore. And I'm going to move back to Charleston, South Carolina, where my family lives, and be around people that love me, and get away from all of these people that party and live to party and have fun. And they were all rich. They were rich. They had money, success. But you know what? They're no different than the people that aren't rich. If you're destroying yourself, you're destroying yourself. It doesn't matter if you're rich and educated or if you're poor and on the street. You're the same, because you are allowing Satan to take control of your mind. And when that happens, you will be destroyed. So that's why loving Christ is so critical. And learning to fear God is important. I am going to add you in. Okay.
Someone took the thing, but it's hot. It's getting cold.
I'm not cranking up here. That, you know, the hardest thing to do when you're teaching about the Lord is to only make it 45 minutes. I mean, there's so much in the Bible to share, and it is so exciting. Oh, the Bible is so exciting. And I promise you, when I used to read the Bible, it was like reading ink on paper. And I would think, this is so boring. Because you know what? I wasn't in love with Christ yet. I wasn't in love with him. And now I'll be sitting in church and the preacher will throw out a scripture, and I will turn to that and start reading it, and I can't stop reading the Bible. And I think, get back in the sermon. But I love God, and I love his word. Oh, his word just speaks to all of us. So we have to, you know, there are lots of scriptures where he says, come out from among those people. Come out and be mine. You'll be forever learning and never understanding. You are getting all this knowledge, but you have no idea about what it means. God is talking to us in so many scriptures about how we read the Bible and we get nothing out of it. It's a dead religion. And it was for me. And I have asked the ladies when I'll go into the jail, I'll say, because I make them participate, but I use myself as the example of what not to do. And I say, how many people in here think going to church would be boring? Raise your hand. And they won't raise their hand, and I'll raise mine, and I'll say, I did. And the minute I say that, they raise their hand. Because you know why? I don't judge them. I don't judge them, and that's what they're scared of. Christians judging them being evil, being wrong, being evil. And so they hide. They hide themselves, and they pretend like they're together and they're cool. But they are little girls that are hurting inside. They want someone to help them. And the only person that can do that is Jesus Christ. So I've told you a little bit about me. So I went home at 37. At 37. But then what happened to me is I went back to church. I stopped doing drugs. I cut my drinking down to drinking some wine. You know, I really wasn't going to parties. I didn't go to situations where people were partying all the time. But I got into real estate, and it was on the beach, and people came there for a whole week to party. And so here I am back around people that party all the time to make a living. And I made more money there than I've ever made in my life, and I had to walk away from it because I knew that they wanted me all the time to go out to eat with them, and they would drink all day. They start with Bloody Marys and mimosas, champagne in the morning. They drink wine in the afternoons. At night, they drink wine, and after they have after-dinner drinks, and then they go to bars and clubs, and they drink, and they drink. And I thought, I've got to quit my job because I know myself. I can't say no. And you have to know yourself. Get to know who you are. And if you have diabetes, when you go to the store, do you want to get sugar? Yeah. But do you have to say no? Yeah. Because I'm pre-diabetic. I have to stand in front of the ice cream and go, woo, that was good enough, and walk away because I can't take it home. And you just have to live with who you are and know all your decisions have consequences and do what is right in the Lord. And when you make a decision, and I want you to know at 37, I went back to church, read the Bible, did some praying. I thought I was a good person. But at 45, I was sitting in church one Sunday, and this is when my life changed. And I thought to myself, I looked around the whole auditorium, about 300 people, and I thought, am I the only person here that doesn't really get this? Because I really don't get it. I don't get the joy, the peace, all that God promises that will happen in my life, I don't really get that because I don't feel it. And I don't know, but I believe in my heart that God presents thoughts to our mind. He doesn't, that's how he talks to us. I know that there's, people call it the tiny still voice, and you have to be quiet to hear it. But there are thoughts that are presented to me that are not my thoughts, because you know why? How I know it's him? Because I don't want to do it. And I didn't think it up because I don't want to do it. And it's always about work. It's all, now that was in the beginning. So I'm sitting there looking around thinking, I really just don't get the Bible. I don't get it. You know, what I'm doing is I'm a hypocrite. I'm living my life in the world, and I'm part of the world. And I just go to church, and it makes me feel good that I'm a Christian, but I'm not a Christian. I never share the gospel with anybody. I'm not in love with the Lord, and I don't have any fear of God because I'm comfortable. So I don't have anything the Bible's teaching. I don't have anything going. And I just sat there, and all of a sudden, this thought was presented to my mind. You don't study the Bible, you read it. And I thought, oh, that's a lot of work. That was Satan in my head. That's a lot of work, but I need to do that. I need to study the Bible to understand it, not just read it. Because I knew all the stories. I went to church all my life. And the next thought was, you need to get on your knees and get a real prayer life. Because I had prayed, and I thought, you know what? When I pray, I don't feel connected. I don't feel connected. And I know the difference now. So, how do you get great at anything? How do you get great? Practice. Practice. And also, it starts, everything in your life starts with one thought, a decision. You have to make a decision to do everything. If you want to be a lawyer, you got to make the decision to do it, and then you got to make a plan. It's the same with Christianity. You have to make a decision. I want to be what he says. I want to love him. I want to be in awe of God. I mean, do you realize every single person in the Bible that encountered an angel or a spirit from heaven, or even Jesus Christ knowing who he was, fell at his feet? Fell, even John in Revelations, when he goes up into heaven, falls down in front of the angel, and the angel says, get up, get up. I'm just a servant too, get up. Because we have no concept of what being in awe of the Creator is. And you have to spend some time in prayer asking him to give you that, because you're not going to get it from you. You don't have that kind of power. But God can bring that into your mind and your heart. And that's why he says, I need for you to love me with all your mind and your heart and your soul and your strength. Because when you read those words, that is everything that you are, everything. And when you have to give God every single thing that you are, you can't just spend an hour a week with him and toss him a bone. And that's what I did. I mean, I'm telling you about my own life. When I teach, I'm talking about who I was. And the reason why I was sitting in church saying I go to church 3 times a week, I pray, I read the Bible, but I don't get any of this, is because I had never really given myself to God. I'd never done that. How many women in here knows what it's really like to submit? To submit. To submit. Raise your hand. You know what it's like to submit to your husband? There have been times where you submitted to your husband as a Christian and you didn't want to because you thought your husband was wrong, maybe. And that's part of marriage. But the Bible says you must submit. In everything. In everything. God is calling you to obedience. And there are times that we say, I said to a man one time, I said, it's easy for you to submit to God. He has your best in mind. But the man doesn't always have the best for the woman in mind. And we have to submit to him. But God is calling us to obedience. And sometimes it's hard. But it's not about making submission hard, because we all have to submit to God. What's so hard about it is we won't get ourselves out of the way to learn how to obey and submit. Because love is perfect, and I could never figure out why. How can love be perfect? And I would get all excited sometimes when you're at odds with somebody or your husband or your kids, and you want to punch them out. And I mean, these are thoughts that Satan puts in your mind. It makes you angry, you're upset, and it may even anger can come from love. Peter had anger from love. He begged Jesus, don't go to Jerusalem. And you know what Jesus said to him? Get behind me, Satan, because he knew where that was coming from. And we have to read the Bible and understand what the Bible is saying to us. Satan is very, very smart. Satan is very clever. And Satan he surrounds the world. Can you believe our world now? Wow. There's not anyone in here that cannot see the evil. That it's hard to even imagine, and it will get a lot worse because Satan is having his time. He's having his time, and he is destroying everything. And right now, I think about Jesus saying, "Work." When he was with the apostles in town, and they were walking along, and they came across the blind man, and one of the apostles said to him, "Lord, why is this man blind? Was it his sin or his parents' sin?" And he said, "No, he was made for the glory of God." See, that's a different thought, isn't it? He was made for the glory of God. So here, Christ is going to give him sight, and he's going to become a witness to Jesus Christ being the Son of God. And that's why God created him, because Jesus just said that, to glorify him. And he's telling us all the time, get out and work for me. And he said, I want you to know you need to work while you have the day, because night is coming when no man will work. And I feel like I'm watching that happen, where night is coming, because we will be persecuted for Jesus Christ. Do not get lost in America. Do not get lost in politics. Do not get lost in Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and all the garbage that is on TV. Don't get lost in any of that. This is Satan. Anyone that's not with God, he says, is against me. You're either with me or you are against me. There are no good people. There's no in between. And he also says, submit to authority, because I choose the rulers for my purposes. Just like he made Pharaoh for his purposes, he hardened his heart. He said, you submit, because and what he's telling us is, I'm God. That was hard for me to get that in that awe moment. Awe. I am God. And there's a song I listen to that says, the creator that created me holds me in his hand, comforts me, and gives me strength to stand. Now that line right there tells you what God thinks of you. You're his child, and he's your father. And when he says, fear me, what he's saying is that everyone understands that. But see, you know what Satan does? He takes everything that God says and he twists it into the opposite. So, isn't it a bumper sticker now or a decal on a car that says no fear? No fear, no fear. The whole Bible says, fear the Lord, fear the Lord. But Satan says, no fear, because he's telling people to dwell on themselves and have no fear. He's not saying, fine, become fearless in the Lord. He's telling you, be self-willed, be about me. And that's what our culture teaches us, be about me, which is what Paul's writing to Timothy in the last days. They will be lovers of self. People will dwell on themselves. And that's what keeps people from speaking the gospel. Because we have that fear. We have tremendous fear of rejection. We all do. And this is a question you have to ask yourself. What are you being rejected of, Satan? I mean, I had to ask real questions here. What's the rejection? Do I care if this person likes me? No. And you know what? I'll tell you what changed my whole life about teaching and whether people like me or not. I went back and studied Paul. Nobody could be more abused than the Apostle Paul. He was beaten. Every time something happened to me, I would think, nobody has stoned me and thrown me out of town for dead yet. And I would think, so what's your problem, Kila? What's your problem? because nothing bad has happened to you. And Jesus said, if you're my friend, the greatest thing a friend can do is give his life for his friend. Because he was getting ready to give his for the apostles and for all of us. And they didn't know it, but he was telling them, you're going to give your life for me because we are friends. And that's what he said in John, I think it's chapter 15, when he's getting ready to be arrested, right before he's arrested. And he said, I am no longer your master. You have been with me a long time. You are my friend. And don't we sing that song? When we sing that song, does it mean anything to us? What a friend we have in Jesus. Do you know what that means when you sing that song? If you think you're Jesus' friend, that means you think you can die for him. Because he said that. What does a friend do? Give their life. Greatest thing they can do is give their life. The Bible is so beautiful. I mean, this is like, when I talk, I feel like I'm just warming up because there's so many things in the Bible that are beautiful. And I would like to just say, go back and read 1 Corinthians 13 about what love is. And think about what you have felt in your life about love and what it has meant to you when you were really at that excited pitch, when you had chemistry with someone. That is the most incredible feeling in the world, where you feel like you're spinning out of control and you can't think of anything, can't do anything. I mean, youth is a wonderful thing sometimes, and sometimes it's a curse. But it's just the truth. And we feel, oh, if only I could be close to that love, and that's that person, or even a child. Let's say you've never had that with a man. You have that with a child. I mean, how many people have stood over a child's bed and just felt a rush? A rush. That's love. Do you love Christ that much? There was a preacher that just came here, and I am a dog person. Love dogs. Always had a dog. I saved dogs. I used to work a deal with my vet that I would bring dogs in off the street, and he would take care of them and fix them, and I would just pay him for the medicine, and we'd try to find them homes. And I wasn't a Christian then. I was obsessed with things in the world, and man, I just wanted to save every dog I saw. I carried dog food in my car, stopped and fed everything I could see. I mean, I was a dog person, and you know why? Because I got my love from dogs. Because my father emotionally abused me. And because he told me I was worthless, it was so painful. And I could never please him that I thought, if my father doesn't love me, who could ever love me? So I put myself in a box, and I built the wall around me. And I went outside of the box, and I did my job, and I performed, and I acted in the world. And then I went home back in my box where I was safe. And it was survival because I was safe. I had no idea that Christ could change that. And I hid. And I would not let anybody in. And I would say, people are dangerous. Don't let them in. Don't let them get to you. Look what your father did to you. And he was supposed to love you. Your parents wiped you out. And then Satan uses all that garbage to hold you down. And you never look up because you're so caught up with all this in the world. And he took all of that out of me. And now I can honestly look at my dad. He passed away about 15 years ago. And I feel sorry for him now, and I see him as a person. Not as my father, not as a hurting little girl who's desperate to have their parent love them. I don't need any of that. I have Christ. God is my father. Do you know that freed me? I was at a meeting one night. Somebody said, you only have to please your father. And I thought of my dad, and then they said, no, you only have one father. And the moment I thought that, I was free. I was free. And I went, wow. That's why he says, don't forsake the assembling of the saints, because you don't know when something's going to change your life, or you're going to change somebody else's life. You don't go to church to be entertained. We go to help each other. And that one thought that was presented in a meeting changed my life, my whole life. I know my time is up, and I have handouts, and I'm big on handouts. My handouts that I'm going to give to you Tomorrow I'm actually going to talk about what it's like to go out and speak to people. But before you are ever going to be comfortable speaking to people, you're going to have to learn what fearing God means, which means, I want you to have this in your mind. You have one Father, and when your Father gives you his rules, which they all do, because that's their job, is to teach you obedience and what to do that's right. When your Father gives you rules, when you break them, you are disciplined. So there are many times you think, oh, I would really like to do that. I'd really like to go there, but I'm not going to do it because if my dad ever found out, he would kill me. Okay? And that is what fear of your Father is. It is a healthy respect that he wants the best for you, that he loves you, and that he has told you the right way to go. That is your God. He is your Father. And he has done all those things because he loves you. He created the Garden of Eden in the beginning. It was perfect for man. He came and walked with them, was their friend, gave them everything, but he didn't create robots. He could have. So he gave them freedom of speech because how can you be a friend to a robot? So you have to give a person freedom, not speech, but of choice. You have to have freedom of choice. And when you have freedom of choice, good and evil is presented, and you're going to have to choose it. And always choose God. Always choose his ways. Learn to be in awe of him. Learn to have incredible respect for him. Learn to fear him. Because he tells us in Luke 12, Luke writes, don't fear the people that can kill you. Fear the one after you are killed that can throw you into hell. It says that. Into hell. And that never ends. That's eternity. Those things start creating a fear of God in you that is a respect. Because I would think, well, I'm not going to do that. My dad will kill me. And see, that is a healthy thought. Because what he was trying to get me to do was the right thing, and I was going off into a kind of a bad area. But I knew his was right, so I followed him. And that's what God is calling us to do, obedience. Be in obedience. So these handouts that I'm going to give you, these are scriptures that I have found along the way that have helped me. So I have some words here. This is easy. Pass it around. Here we go. Yes, there are two different ones. 4 pages each. Oh, I have enough. I think I made 30. How many people are in here? 2, 4, 6, 8. We're good. 20. I'm good. All right. So I just want you to think in those 2 questions. Do I fear God? Do I fear God? The first step, Proverbs 1:7, the first step to wisdom. And how can you know anything without wisdom? Is the fear of God. Proverbs 1:7, the fear of God. Get that. Study the fear of God. Get out a computer and research that word and start studying the scriptures. So a lot of the stuff that I have put down here are things that I do for me. Because I'm always reinforcing God in my life. I want God to rule my life. Because what he says, I mean, he'll, in Isaiah 40, he's going to gather us under his wings and protect us and love us. I want that. I want that protection. I need his love. I want to spend eternity with the Lord. And I know you all do too, or you would not be here. Mm-hmm. So I hope these scriptures.
You get people in church, persecution from church.
Are you asking me if I've been persecuted?
Sometimes in church you get people who
are persecuted?
Persecute you.
Yes, yeah. I was actually thrown out of the jail. In 9 months, I went in there because, see, I used my life to teach the word, and they all gravitated to me and related to me. And so I had so much power through God in there with these women that 123 women in 9 months were baptized. And they were doing World Bible Study, and wow, we had incredible Bible studies 3 times a week in the jail. And the homosexual officers got rid of me. They trumped up charges, went to their lawyers, said I was a liability, and got me thrown out of the jail. So I went home, And I prayed, God, how do we get in the jail? And I just thought, oh, the mail. The mail. So I don't know how God speaks to us, but he does. He opens doors. So now there are 24 women at this church and in Plainview Church of Christ up the street that write to these women 4,500 cards a year. And it is changing their life. So we get gospel into the mail, and the man that hands out Bibles takes in the lessons still because I can't go and do that. So we're still in the jail, and this year they have baptized 26. And it's not as much because speaking and sharing my life with them brought them to the Lord faster because they didn't feel so dirty. Because you feel dirty when you're a sinner. When you feel like no one is ever going to believe you or love you or listen to you again, you feel dirty. And that it's like being raped, that no one is ever going to love you and you're dirty. And that's how they feel. But Christ, it makes me want to cry. Christ can change everything. Everything. And the persecution is there. I've never been persecuted until I came to Huntsville because I really started teaching boldly.
That's when it hits.
Yeah. Because
you have people who are jealous.
Yeah.
Oh, you get better.
Yeah.
You get that.
Yeah. And they don't want Jesus Christ spoken of, and Satan is strong. So another thing, if you're writing things down, read Ephesians 6. Read Ephesians 6. Read Hebrews 11:6, where God says you must believe that I exist. First of all, you must believe that Bible is the truth, that I exist. And then he said, then you must believe that God is saying this to your Father. I'm a rewarder of those who diligently and earnestly seek me. So if you are getting up every day and looking for him, and that's what changed my life. I started getting into him diligently. I started with all faith and belief. I came from nothing, from absolutely nothing, a total prodigal son sinner, from addiction, everything, sexual immorality, all of it, lying, cheating, deceit, all of it, because it all goes together. It all goes together. I came from that to here, and now I just can't tell you how exciting it is to speak about him. It doesn't matter where it's at. There is never a moment I'm selling my possessions. If you come to my house and buy something off Craigslist, you're going to hear about Jesus Christ in my house. And you would be amazed at how many people love it. They want to hear Jesus Christ. You don't have to be obnoxious. You just throw it out there. A lot of times I just say, oh, I do jail ministry, and then I'm quiet, and they bring it back up. Because they say, oh, well, what do you do? And they start talking about God. You don't have to. We'll talk about that tomorrow. There are great techniques about
And my congregation has a prison ministry as well, so that's cool.
Yes.
And I know it's rare because I'm deaf, but they have the women's and men's go in different directions. And I say, let me know if there's a deaf prisoner. So I've been there a few times to work with deaf prisoners. Not too many times.
That is neat. That is so neat. And, one time I met a Spanish woman, and she was the only one in 2 years that was Hispanic in the jail, which was amazing to me. And I prayed that week, God, I need a Hispanic teacher. I need somebody to write her. And I went to the inner city that Sunday to talk to them about doing a class. And you know what? When you diligently seek God, which I was at another place diligently seeking to serve him, that was Hispanic Day at the inner city, and I went straight to the preacher's wife and said, I need somebody. That was that week I prayed for it. And I said, will you write to this woman? And now she's my Hispanic woman. She said, oh, I'll write to anybody. And so I got it done in 4 days. 4 days God showed up with the woman I prayed for in 4 days. He always works like that. Yes.
And the way that came about was there was a man who was a prisoner and learned the gospel and went out, and he was looking for a church, and he kept asking for these congregations to consider prison ministry, and didn't get a lot of acceptance until he came to our congregation, and he told his story and the idea of a prison ministry, and we went with it, and we were involved in that. And so I'm glad that you're doing that as well. Wow.
That is so beautiful. Thank you. And those people need so much. Anyway, thank you all. I know I'm way over, but tomorrow at 1:00, we're gonna actually talk about techniques and things about speaking to people.
You're getting applause, Kila.
I hear people telling me you hide behind the Bible. You hear that?
That's me. I don't hear any of it.
I know, but they say stuff like that.
Yeah, they always do. It'll get worse. It doesn't matter. You just go home and pray and say, God, help me, shield me from the garbage.
Thank you so much. You helped me a lot.
Yeah.
You kind of gave me what I need.
You